When he said this is, I thought he was going to say this is.
Oh yeah. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Corridor of Uncertainty. It's our second pod of the day. We woke up for 4 a.m. to watch the Australian Grand Prix, and then did a pod straight after. Then got some much-needed shut-eye, and here we are, having just witnessed the T20 World Cup final, and it's kind of the result we expected, probably the result that we could have predicted right at the start of the tournament in terms of the eventual champions, because India have won the T20 World Cup, meaning they are the first team to go back-to-back and the first team to win it at home. And I suppose, Charlie, we should just, bow down to the achievement of a great side.
Absolutely. As you said, this was probably the result that most of us were expecting. I did say that India were going to win at the start of the tournament, but I deserve no credit for that on two counts. First of all, being that I changed my mind in the last episode and backed South Africa, who were then completely obliterated the following game. But then the second being that, it doesn't take a genius to understand that this India side is something special there. It's the largest margin that a T20 side has ever been better than all the other T20 sides. I think we've seen some dominance in franchise leagues around the world, but international T20 cricket has consistently remained a bit of a lottery. And as you just said, those two stats, which always seem like they were destined to end eventually, because it's just quite bizarre, really, for when you consider, especially now that the World Cup's come so thick and fast. And you would expect that if you had a good team 2 years ago, you'd still have a good team. And also the fact that in T20 cricket, probably less than other formats, but still, home advantage is massive. So I think both of those things were almost, like a curse, like the Australian GP curse that we spoke about earlier. But it's not surprising that it's this team that have managed to overcome it. I just think from top to bottom, they're just, the perfect T20 outfit, the way they approach batting and the way that, even when it goes wrong for them, it never seems to go fully wrong to the extent that they're completely out of the game. I think back to that very first game when they got given a real scare by the USA, and Suryakumar Yadav, who has assembled such an incredible squad around him, that he's actually been able to take a bit of a back seat in this tournament and not needing to do the remarkable things that he used to have to do every innings, basically, to keep India alive when they were, still stuck in the old days of T20 cricket. And he was the only one who'd really caught on to this idea that, you could play far more expansively than we ever thought. But in this tournament, the strike rate's been fairly low. There's been matches like today where he hasn't even bothered to send himself in because he knows that, he's got so many other people in and around him who can do their job, be it that top three, which is just remarkable. And sorry, we're just looking at the footage, and someone just accidentally almost walked in front of Danny Morrison, and he was not having it. But be it that remarkable top three, but then those dynamic batters that come in after that who seem to read the situation so well and understand what they have to do, like Dubé and Pandya. If they need to dig them out of a hole on those rare occasions, they can do. But also if they have 15 balls to face, then they know what the assignment is, and they can get England up to India up to a scarily large total. That was a bit of wishful thinking there. Mm-hmm. And then the bowling attack, as I was saying to you earlier, it's quite rare in modern T20 cricket to have a team that relies so heavily on just its main five bowlers and doesn't really defer to a sixth or seventh option. But it's only testament to how strong those five bowlers are, spearheaded by Bumrah, of course, but they've got multiple incredible spinners, some of which have barely been able to even get on the pitch in this tournament. If they wanted to field five fantastic spinners, they could. Usually they just go with the two. And then Arshdeep Singh as well is very underrated, fantastic new ball bowler. Whenever, it's become increasingly stark with every game when you see India bat first, which we'll get onto later. When you see India bat first and you see how they're just on the money from the first and second over with those openers just, racking up 15 to 20 runs each over, it feels like. To contrast that then with the new ball being thrown to Arshdeep Singh, who just swings it round corners. They can't get a hang on it. So I was saying to you, they're so good at the minute. It's hard to know exactly which part of it is more remarkable, really, the batting or the bowling. I think the batting will continue to get the headlines, but bowlers win you tournaments and they win you series, and you could probably argue that it's happened again this tournament.
What I found, you mentioned there that for some reason India in the knockouts were given opportunities to put a total on the board first, but they just seem to almost serenely rattle their way to a really high score. And we speak about, I was saying, why aren't New Zealand going for it more during the game? But, when you play expansive and aggressive cricket, you're obviously at risk of losing wickets and then having to rely on your lower order. But India, they seem to rattle off great scores, have remarkable run rates, and yet they don't lose wickets, which just suggests a level of class, a cut above the opposition, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think if you look at the techniques of these players, they're ironclad in first class, credentials, and a lot of these players, even if, this is probably the biggest divergence we've ever seen between Indian Test and T20 teams, and I do think a lot of these players on feature in this tournament will probably never play a Test for India again, or just never at all. But it doesn't mean that they're not, impeccably trained from clearly a very young age. Be it their bat swing, their balance, their footwork, it's always impeccable. And I think the other thing that allows them, to rack up these big scores with, as you were saying, relative ease. And we've given Gautam Gambhir a lot of stick during this tournament about his left-hand, right-hand obsession, and we're far from the only people to do that. And there definitely came a point halfway through this tournament where it had clearly become untenable and it got a little bit ridiculous. But credit to India for making the little tweaks to the batting lineup that they needed to. And I think actually, the way this lineup is constructed, and they've eventually, I think perfected it in this tournament, just means that for those teams who are obsessed with matchups, well, every team, that, when you're playing people this good, you're desperate to find their one weakness. For Abhishek Sharma, who, overall had a quieter tournament than we're expecting, it's that right arm off spin. But the way that India have made this batting lineup is that when you try and use your matchup bowler, that batter that you're targeting is usually batting alongside someone who is amazing at hitting that kind of ball. And if they're smart enough to just knock it for a single, which Abhishek, to his credit, slowly learned over the tournament, was usually just, an absolute one mode player. But I think with his struggles in the group stage, he recognised that he could lean on his teammates a little bit more and rely on them. And yeah, so if you have a batsman that you're targeting with a specific type of bowler who may even be a part-time bowler, if that batter that you're targeting is off strike and the other person from the other end is a brilliant batsman full stop, let alone against your type of bowling, then very quickly these matchup overs end up getting deposited for 20 runs as well. So yeah, it's really difficult to know how you're supposed to stop this Indian team right now.
Yes, congratulations to India, deserved champions of the T20 World Cup. 2026 is this is year of 2026, isn't it? Keep forgetting what bloody year it is. Oh my God, how time flies. But we should probably speak a little bit about how we got to this point, of course. Your predictions have been entertaining throughout, Charlie, and New Zealand and South Africa were probably the two teams that were the centre of your finest, you could say, finest moments from a content point of view, from an entertainment point of view, because they met in the semi-finals, and of course we tipped India, as a lot of people did, to win the tournament, and then there was logic to your choice to change and back South Africa, because they defeated India in the group stages and were looking pretty imperious, and then kind of somewhat out of nowhere, the New Zealand, who some pundits have slept on at times, New Zealand absolutely demolished them.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the scorecard again now. It's insane. 173 for one off 12.5 overs for New Zealand. I think when we saw that South Africa had scratched their way up to 169, you were asking for a little bit of guidance on how that was as a score, and I was sort of saying, I mean, I'm not watching this game live, so I couldn't tell you exactly, but it seemed to me like it was runs on the board to the extent that it was going to, at least make it a little bit difficult for New Zealand. Not necessarily be enough, but I was like, we've probably got a game on here, especially considering how good South Africa's bowling attack is. But no, they were just absolutely swept aside by Finn Allen, one of the most remarkable innings of all time, really, in a T20 World Cup. 100 exactly off 33 balls. We had like 4 or 5 exact 100 scores.
Yeah,
Did you notice that?
Harry Brook got 100, didn't he?
There was a couple of hundreds, 2 or 300 not outs, and then Bethel got 105, and then the Canadian youngster got 110, which is very satisfying numbers. But it's just mental to strike it over 300 for an entire 100 innings. I was kind of saying to you that it seems like 33-ish balls is kind of the practical limit for T20 hundreds at the minute. We've seen David Miller hit one in South Africa colours. We've seen one from a 14-year-old in the IPL, Suryavanshi. But we hadn't got anywhere close to seeing one in a major tournament with the pressure ramped up, let alone a semi-final against the favourites or the second favourites for the entire tournament. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But of course, the game was won long before he actually hit that 100th run. Looking back at the South Africa scorecard, Cole McConkey, who I was talking to you about, is a good example of sort of New Zealand pragmatism. He's just been sort of shipped in, especially for this tournament, to play that spinning all-rounder role because Bracewell was injured. He only bowled 1 over, which was fairly early on in the innings because he dismissed the numbers 2 and 3 for South Africa, McConkey, de Kock, and Rickleton. And then they didn't bowl him again. Why is that, 2 for 9. Well, I think I didn't watch the game live, so I can't really claim to know, but clearly they thought, well, we've got what we need out of him in this game. It's not one that we're expecting to be in his favour overall, and the seamers we think are going to do most of the damage here, although they did bowl 8 other overs of spin. So I wouldn't be able to tell you, maybe it was just a matchups thing, maybe there was too many left-handers further down the order, or no, right-handers further down the order, because he had dismissed 2 left-handers. But I think it's just stuff like that, which I think you have to credit New Zealand for, just like fantastic game awareness and management, and with one very notable exception, which again we'll be touching on soon. But just I think constantly getting probably close to the maximum out of this group of players who are very talented. But I think I said to you earlier when you were asking for a little bit of an explanation about New Zealand that they're similar to England in a lot of ways, with a good pace attack and good white ball spinning options, but maybe not red ball, and dynamic batters. But I kind of said, while they have a slightly lower ceiling than England, they have probably a much higher floor. And considering the fact that post, this was another final heartbreak post 2019 World Cup, but since that World Cup we've seen them in the semi-finals in the 2021 T20, and then again the following year, and then in that Champions Trophy final against India as well in 2024. It's just remarkable consistency when you consider as well, in and around that time, that Australia have had nowhere near that kind of regular success in these tournaments, and even India probably have the same amount of semi-final appearances, I would imagine, or thereabouts, as New Zealand. So, and they're definitely far outperforming South Africa as well in these tournaments over quite a long period now. So hats off to them. They've fallen short again at the final hurdle, and it will hurt for a lot of these players who are aging out and probably won't, well, I don't want to say probably won't get another opportunity, because they'll probably make the final in South Africa in 2027 now. So I'm just not gonna say anything about that. I'm not gonna try and make any kind of prediction for or against New Zealand, but just to say congratulations. You've done yourself and your country proud again. Easy to forget that there's a population of about 5 million people in New Zealand. So, they're just an incredibly impressive setup from domestic cricket all the way up. And well done. Just another great tournament for them.
Do you think they'll reflect on it positively then?
It's hard to know, really. get the sense that they're a down to earth and realistic bunch, and I think that they'll understand that this was a great effort, and they'll be proud of their efforts. But as you say, I just think some of them must be thinking now, like, that was my chance, it slipped away again. And if they do allow doubt to creep in, then there probably will be maybe thinking over a beer tonight, I'm not sure I'm ever going to get my hands on an ICC trophy.
Oh, tough to take, I'm sure. So that was the first semi-final, which was a bit of a shock. And in the second semi-final, there was an overwhelming favourite, of course, India versus England. But actually, England gave it a real go and got within 7 runs of chasing India. And we'll touch on the fact that they were in a chasing position in a bit, but
3 references to the fact that we're going to touch on.
Really,
I think it shows you how much it's been frustrating us, this talking point.
I think it's all we've been asking questions of it to each other, haven't we, throughout both the final and that semi-final. So India made a total of, was it about 240, 250 odds?
253 for 7.
253 for 7. There you go, the stat man's on hand. And I think when that happened, we both resigned ourselves we took a little picture of me frowning and folding my arms by the TV thinking, let this be over. But England came very close, within 7 runs of chasing it down. And Jacob Bethel in particular, did himself a few favours with his valiant efforts to drag us towards that total, didn't he?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if this is what every major series or tournament is going to end in now for England. It's just, a disappointing defeat, but with Jacob Bethel somehow emerging with his stock even higher after another 100. Just, what a player he looks like turning out to be. It was only, it was as recently as September that all the talk was about he didn't have 100 in cricket. In professional cricket, he didn't have any kind of 100.
I think we might have even had that conversation on the pod.
Yeah, exactly. But cut to March, and he's got an ODI 100 against South Africa, against a very good South Africa team, and then a Test 100 in the Ashes at Sydney. Absolutely remarkable. And then a T20I 100 in the World Cup semi-final against India. Probably the best T20 side that there's ever been. I can't think of many people who would have completed that triple in a more remarkable set of circumstances. I wanted to ask you a quiz question, actually. He became the 4th man for England to score hundreds in all 4 formats. Could you tell me the other 3?
I'm going to go with Joe Root.
No T20 100 for Joe Root. I'm
going to go with... The thing is, Charlie, this is going to expose my noobdom, you see.
That's fine.
Can I just throw names out?
Yeah, of course. Well, just think about it. There's one that you should get.
Okay, Alistair Cook.
Right, no. Stop. Right, I'll try and help you out. T20, I think this tournament will have given you a bit of a warped perception. Yes, well done.
Yes.
I think this tournament will have given you a bit of a warped perception about how common T20 hundreds are. It's really in the last few years that they've taken off.
Okay.
In early days of T20, there just wasn't really hundreds.
So I'm thinking
in the
recent.
same manner. So fairly recent, yeah. Harry Brooks, correct. Obviously, he got his first T20 World Cup, T20 100. Yes, Joss Butler is the other one, and then I think I'd be very surprised if you got the last one.
So it's Bethel is Bethel the other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm thinking recent. Pope?
No, I'll give you not a clue, but I'll give you a little bit more background information about this man, because I think if I give you these 3 pieces of information in a microcosm, you'd probably be surprised that you've never heard of him.
Okay.
He's got a T20 100, and during that time when he was batting 3 for England, he was ranked number 1 T20 batsman in the world.
Wow.
He got his 100 in the ODI team a few years later, when he was probably the shining light in a faltering ODI team when all the big guns were getting regularly rested and we were really struggling. But he was opening the batting and averaging about 57, 58 in ODI cricket. And then he got his Test 100 in an Ashes down under. So it's quite remarkable, really. But those 3 accolades all go to a man called David Milan.
Never heard of him.
No, he's if you listen to TMS at all this tournament, you might have heard a South African man who was an England batsman. He's called David Milan. He's sort of he never really got his flowers in England colours, I think, for various reasons. That test run that he had wasn't really very successful, as anyone batting in the top 3 or 4 for England up until recently just never really did very well at all, apart from Joe Root. So it wasn't a surprise that ended, but he did manage to get a Ashes 100 down under in there before it ended. The T20 run that he had, he was sort of our anchor, and he was very consistent, but I think, you would probably say that it wasn't really ever fair for him to actually be the number 1 batsman. It just sort of kind of happened with the way that the rankings work. And actually Owen Morgan, the captain at the time, wasn't the biggest fan of his, because I think he didn't really bat in the way that Morgan wanted. He wasn't completely selfless and completely obsessed with strike rates in the way that Morgan wants and the way that India wants. And actually Morgan, in the innings that he got his 100 in New Zealand, Morgan lambasted him in the media after because he didn't run for a second run off the last ball so he could protect his not out. And Morgan said, I don't want those kind of peoples in my team. You always run on the last ball to try and get that 1 run, because you might lose by 1 run. And if we did, it'd be your fault.
Interesting.
This was after he'd just scored 100. In a score of like 200.
How do you feel about that? That feels a bit harsh. Or
it was harsh to single him out in the media, but I completely agree with the ethos. I don't think landmarks really matter in T20 cricket. I mean, some people would make the argument that they don't matter at all in all cricket. Why does it matter if you score 99 compared to 100? If that 1 run is very unlikely to affect the result of the game. And why do players look devastated walking off for 99 and chuffed walking off for 100? So I do agree with that. But yeah, anyway, that's just a little bit about David Milan for you. But Bethel's innings was pretty just remarkable. It didn't seem like he was just trying to muscle everything in the way that maybe some of his teammates were. There was some great little touch shots. There was that little reverse ramp, and then there was the reverse slog sweep that really reminded me of Ben Stokes hitting Nathan Lyon into the Western Terrace during that crazy Ashes 100, which is probably my favourite cricket shot of all time. And also, if you look at the 2 batting innings, you have India, and obviously this is the way you want to be, but you have that entire top 7, which completely changed order depending on the needs of the innings at that moment, pretty much all contributing with the exception of Sharma. He had 89 of 42, then 39 of 18, 43 off 25, 11 off 6, 27 off 12, and 21 off 7. And then if you look at England, you've got 5 off 3, 25 off 17, 7 off 6, 17 off 5, 35 off 20, 18 off 14, and then just in the middle of that, 105 off 48. So it was a great lone hand, and it would have been, one of the great, if not the greatest T20 World Cup innings had he got them over the line. I think in reality, though, this game was never really on in the way that it felt, or the way that the scorecard makes it look. They needed 30 runs off that last over, and that's just never really going to happen, especially against an Indian death bowler. So I think, fair play for England for not falling in a heap, as we've unfortunately seen New Zealand do today. But I enjoyed this game, but I don't think it was ever really the contest that maybe it's been painted out to be.
Yeah, and throughout they were trying to tee it up as what was the word they used when India had made their total. They were describing the game as being they certainly were trying to sell it as a contest.
Yeah, they were like, this is going to be close.
This is going to be really close. Yeah,
which I was kind of saying to you, like, it really does feel like cricket commentators are always desperate to pretend like the game isn't over. I guess because cricket's such a long sport, you can't really be telling people when there's 3 hours left that it's basically over as a contest. And we have seen remarkable things happen in cricket, and obviously because they play out over such a long period of time, they are some of the most incredible comebacks in sport. But yeah, I always thought it was definitely a little bit over-egged from the commentators, and I think they were fortunate even to get the close game which they predicted.
I think this next point kind of rolls quite well into the final review as well. And that is the one that we've been hinting at for a little while, is that teams in the knockout stages, England and New Zealand, winning the toss and electing to bowl first against India, which we haven't been able to make sense of. It gives India the chance to rattle off a score, put runs on the board and put severe scoreboard pressure on a chasing team to chase down, in both cases, scores that would have been, unbelievable chases, possibly record-breaking chases. And why would you give such a classy outfit who, by the way, I think the important bit of context is the only hiccup they really suffered was of that South Africa game, where the inverse was the case, where India were having to chase and having to push the boat out and were losing wickets and were being put under pressure. Having seen that, why not repeat that and treat that as the blueprint for victory? Obviously, both teams came up short, and I don't think we really have the answers, do we, Charlie?
No, I think first of all, irregardless of the conditions that you face with the pitch when you have a look, I think especially when you're facing a team as good as India, you have to ask yourself, what's our route to victory here? And as far as I can tell, if you're bowling first against India, your only route to victory is to bowl them out, because I don't see how otherwise you're going to get them. They don't seem like a team you can kind of restrict to a score. It feels like you have to roll through them. And
that doesn't happen.
No, exactly. They haven't been bowled out all tournament, and the closest they got was against the USA, surprisingly. And you saw the enduring class of Surya Kumar Yadav in that innings and how he was able to just drag his team out of that mess. So, I think it's very wrong for anyone to think that these are just mindless hitters in this Indian team, and there are plenty of people in that lineup with the nous to drag them out of trouble. And I think also, you don't want to get too sucked into the other team when you're playing, and that can cause issues of its own. But on some level, you surely just got to think, what don't they want to do right now? How can we just make them a little bit uncomfortable? Surya Kumar Yadav said in both tosses that he would have happily... Well, in the England game, he said he would have batted first. In this one, he was slightly more measured in saying they're happy to bat first, which maybe implies they were thinking about chasing. But I just don't really understand. I don't see how you're restricting India to less than 220 if they're batting first. I think particularly for New Zealand, who I see their strengths as a bowling lineup, with maybe the exception of Matt Henry as a constraining side, a constricting side. Someone like Mitch Santner, who we're just seeing on the screen now, is very wise at using the dimensions of the ground, for example, to limit run rates. But I think if your best skill as a bowling attack is to limit run rates, then surely get runs on the board, and then just by the fact that you're limiting the run rate, you put pressure on India to go harder. I think you're right in pointing out that the only game that India lost, which is the only game they've lost in the last two tournaments against South Africa, they were batting second. It was also on this ground, on the Narendra Modi Stadium.
Make it make sense.
I really think that South Africa, if they did one thing before they departed this tournament,
they showed
the blueprint to beat India, and then the two teams that followed just completely ignored it. I think teams maybe got a little bit psyched out by the fact that that India did then chase 190 out against West Indies in the following game, but 50-50 when chasing 190, you'd take those odds over the regularity which the 100% win rate that they've had batting first in this tournament. Yeah, I'm just a little bit confused. I think I was saying to you earlier that I feel like there's a little bit of the old money thing where teams still think that, chasing, the team bowling for batting first won't know what par is, and they might stumble to a total that we can chase down, or dew might play a factor. Obviously, we have seen New Zealand chase incredibly well at points in this tournament, but I think on both of those issues, dew is, they're trying their best to factor dew out of the game because it has played far too much of an effect in nighttime T20 cricket over the years, and they've introduced that spray that seems to be quite effective, and they were using it in Mumbai, which meant that no dew seemed to come down during England's innings. But then also when you consider the fact that India aren't a team anymore that don't know what par is or don't know how to get to par. They used to be, and we saw that in 2022 when England beat them by 10 wickets. But I think I'd go as far to say that this India team doesn't care about par as a concept. I think they think that 250 is always possible, and if they fall in a heap trying to get it, then they'll reassess and they'll manage to scrape themselves up to something.
Absolutely. I don't really understand the thinking there. So that leads us quite nicely into just a little bit of a review of the final that we've just witnessed. It just never really looked like a contest, to be honest. I think maybe the closest it ever was the first over of the first innings. And then since then, India just turned the screw, built a total that we've seen them do it before, and never looked like New Zealand were going to be able to chase that down. I know we've discussed that the tactics were questionable, perhaps with the toss and whether to bowl or bat. But I think when it comes down to it, we just saw the best side in the world show their class.
Yeah, there wasn't really a point when anything became apparent to me to say that New Zealand are just getting this all wrong here. I think obviously that Lockie Ferguson over early up where he just completely lost control felt like a turning point. But you know, I was thinking that, you know, they've got India a little bit in control here. They've got the lid on them, and actually what had happened is they'd scored 27 for none in 3 overs. But that's just how insane this batting lineup is, that you feel like you've actually got some modicum of control if that's the scoreline, when absolutely you don't. And it just feels like even if you can get a quiet few overs in at the start, and you know, even at the fact India's batting lineup, or India's opening partnership, that's been such a strength of theirs throughout this era of dominance, has actually really faltered this tournament, and today was the best partnership that they've had, opening partnership. And I think it only took 4 overs for it to be their longest opening partnership. But I think that's testament to the fact that, you know, even if they do lose early wickets, their head doesn't drop, they don't reevaluate, they just plough through. And yeah, I mean, me sitting on your sofa here definitely can't think of a way to stop them, apart from maybe batting first. But I'm really not sure what New Zealand could have done here. I think you were fairly critical of their approach in their innings, but I just think as soon as you lose 3 wickets in the power play chasing 250, which to be fair, I know England did, but it felt like any time they went for the expansive shot, it was caught on the boundary. You know, India's boundary catching was exceptional in this match and in the semi-final as well. And we were saying in regards to the England game, you know, if you make a situation where 2 amazing catches from Axar Patel is kind of all India need to win the match, even if you're annihilating their bowlers for most of the 20 overs, then it indicates that you've got yourself in a bit of a mess to begin with.
Yeah, it does feel a shame because there were a couple of, I mean, the Harry Brook drop catch and then 2 outstanding pieces of fielding were the difference in the end in that India versus England game. But as you say, you know, you shouldn't put yourself in that position where you know, one fantastic catch can be the difference between winning and losing. And
also, yeah, I think India are showing themselves to be a team that have a tremendous amount of bottle for these big moments, because in a much lower scoring final in 2024 against South Africa, there was another very famous boundary catch where Surya Kumar Yadav himself caught David Miller on the boundary with just a brilliant one of the ones where you catch it and then throw it and then get over and back out. And I think, you know, even though India's catching, actually, if you're talking percentage-wise,
it wasn't
pretty poor this tournament, which I guess just shows how many chances they were creating also. I think, yeah, if you do end up in a tight game with them, there's no indication that they're going to falter under the pressure at all.
Not at all. And once again, all we can say is congratulations. We're seeing a bit of a montage on screen of their main man, Mr. Jasprit Bumrah, probably the GOAT of this format. Should we just have a little word for him? Once again, just showed his class today. They've given him player of the match in the final, 4-15. He's something special, isn't he?
Yeah, he's absolutely remarkable. He's actually had, you wouldn't say a quiet tournament, but, you know,
by his standards,
I think the stats are great. Don't get me wrong, but it's interesting because it feels like in that last World Cup that they won, where the scores were so low, the games were quite tight, and you know the pitches were slow and really suited his type of bowling. It seemed like India was so reliant on him to sort of carry them on his backs, maybe him and Virat Kohli on the other side of the bat. Now we've got a much more well-rounded Indian team where he can just fit in as a cog in the wheel rather than the main man, and that's just an even scarier prospect, really, if he just has to just sort of chug along and do his thing. And I actually think we saw a completely different side to, how Jasper Bumba can be great in that England semi-final, because in a chaotic game, 250 plays 250, which means the run rate is 12 and a half across the entire match. And you had Varun Chakravarti, the top wicket taker in the whole tournament, go at 16. You had Dubé, 22, go for 22 and 1 over, 12.75 for Arshdeep, 12 over to 19 for Dawson from his 1 over, 15 economy for Jofra Archer. And then if you look at Jasprit Bumrah just plugging away, 4 overs, 1 wicket, 33 runs, an economy of 8. He'll be kicking himself in an economy of 8, but as the sort of numbers of the format shift over the years, I think we're going to have to become accustomed to the fact that an economy of 8 is actually pretty remarkable in a game like that. And it's not pretty figures, but when you compare it to everything else around it, it's actually pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, I mentioned before when I suppose we both did, talking about the India-England semi-final, that some standout moments were the key to deciding that game. Drop catches and fantastic bits of fielding. But if you look, I remember watching that game and watching the England chase, is that whenever they deployed Bumrah to bowl an over, it was always, restrictive, really restrictive. And it just shows what a key, even when he's not taking wickets, what a key role he plays, where you can just bring him in to stem the tide when the runs are flowing and just, have a really kind of safe pair of hands for an over where that they're not going to get, blasted for boundaries. And what a weapon that is to have up your arsenal when you've already got an unbelievable attack.
Absolutely. Can I make a suggestion to you, Johnny?
Make a suggestion to me.
Can we have a Guinness?
Oh, Charlie, you're speaking my language. Let's have a Guinness. A Bosch. I could never... How could I reject such a thing? It's actually turned into a bit of a thing for us, hasn't it? When we end a tournament, a cricket tournament, we Guinness.
Yes, it will continue for many a year.
It's not a bad tradition to have, is it?
When the F1 finishes, are we going to spray champagne all over each other?
That would be a fantastic idea. Let's do that. We'll
Fantastic.
do that. Bumrah did get the most wickets in the end. Yeah, they both got 14, but because his stats were better overall, he got top.
That's very well deserved.
Just, his cheeky 4 in the final were what did it.
Well, that's the thing. I think they're the only really cheap wickets he's got all tournament, I think, because, the game was over at that point and he was able to just come on and just make mincemeat of that New Zealand lower order. But, they're well-earned, easy wickets because up until then it's just been, crucial breakthroughs early on. He got rid of Harry Brook and Rachin Ravindra with his first balls in the semi-final and final. So he's earned a couple of slower ball...
Just to finish it off.
Yeah, foxing those lower order players. Right. Do the honours.
Isn't that glorious? Beautiful. Just beautiful. Well, should we allow that to bring us on to a bit of a tournament review section, Charlie? Oh,
shit. Yep, let's do it. Oh, no.
Bosch has gone over.
Crayons. Not crayons.
Oh,
that
no.
sounds really good.
Watercolours, is it?
Yeah, that's the one.
Crayons. So while we were watching that final, Charlie was tapping away on his keyboard, furiously trying to build a team of the tournament, which I think was quite a difficult task because there were quite a lot of standout players. It was a high-quality affair, and there was a lot of mixing and matching, and you had all the stats in front of you, didn't you? And you were trying to rule people out as you went along. Have you got there?
Yeah, just about. It was a weird one because... there were a lot of stand-up performers that were really impressive, but they were all focused to a select number of positions. So we had a lot of openers do really well, as you would probably expect. They're always going to be the top run scorers, but then you had a lot of number 3 batsmen do really well as well. You actually had a little bit of a dearth of number 4s to sort of really contribute. So I had to try and fudge a bit of a batting lineup that I thought would still makes sense.
We spoke about the Garth Crooks approach.
Yeah, exactly. I was determined not to use the Garth Crooks approach where you just name three fullbacks in defence, 4 centre midfielders in midfield, and then 3 strikers in attack.
Play Troy Deeney as a holding midfielder.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't want to do that. I also wanted to make sure the bowling attack made a little bit of sense and that you could bowl, through an innings with it and not get completely destroyed. It was actually quite, not necessarily a standout specialist spinner, which you wouldn't expect for a tournament in India and Sri Lanka. But, there were good candidates, but not, anyone who really stood out. There was a lot of really good fast bowlers and I've had to make some difficult decisions there. But without further ado, let's just have a little look through this lineup. So first person who was one of my 4 or so locks before the final took place was Sahibzada Farhan for Pakistan. He was far and away
top run scorer.
The top run scorer of the innings, so 380 of the tournament. 383 runs at an average of 76. Strike rate of 160, which in old money is really good. But I think as most of the other people in this batting lineup struck higher than that. But yeah, just fantastic. I didn't know anything about him before the tournament, but he really propped up what was a pretty nothing tournament for Pakistan. The only person to get 200s, I think probably, I'm just going to say this without fact checking, so I apologise.
No one else springs to mind.
I don't think anyone else has ever got 200s in a tournament.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think, we've seen far and away more hundreds this tournament than we've usually seen. I think batters over the last couple of years have finally clocked how to score T20 hundreds with regularity. I think actually, funnily, it's part of the reason for that is us moving away from landmarks as a major factor in T20s and understanding that it's just about trying to score as many runs as possible. That's actually freed up players to score more hundreds. Because there's no room for you to slow down and nerdle your way to 100 in T20 cricket. And it felt like a few years ago, it was, if you wanted someone to score 100, they'd have to face 60 balls half the innings, which doesn't happen very much. But now people can do it facing if you feel like Allen, you can do it facing a quarter of the innings. While mentioning Finn Allen, I would say that Finn Allen and Tim Seifert for New Zealand were the best opening partnership of this entire tournament. But I haven't gone with either of them in the final 11. I actually haven't gone with any New Zealand players, which I guess...
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's testament to their...
Your bias against them continues.
Yeah, I think it's testament to their team...
No
their
standouts.
Team play. Yeah, there was a lot of people who were good, but no one just quite good enough, quite great enough to get into this lineup. They're just collecting their runners-up medals as we speak.
They're not only sad because they're collecting a runners-up medal, they're sad because they can hear what you're saying and they know that none of them have done what is the more prestigious award of getting into the Charlie O'Brien team of the tournament.
Absolutely. I think when I started thinking about this team, which was quite a while ago, actually like a week and a half ago, I knew Farhan was already a lock, and that third opening spot was between that second opening spot was between one of 3 people, which would have been Seifert or Allen or Aidan Markram, who was great for South Africa. Really enjoyed watching him bat. It's just really classical strokes, but still scoring at a really dangerous rate. But actually, 2 or 3 games on from that, a clear front runner has emerged, and that is Sanju Samson. He's someone that I absolutely love as a cricketer, from him carrying Rajasthan on his back for a number of years. But I just think I'm really happy for him. This is the first time he's got an opportunity to play in a World Cup, which is just crazy to me. He's been a great player for so long, and the fact that they nearly stuffed it up at the last minute by whipping him out of that team was just a joke. And I'm really happy that what's actually transpired across the course of the tournament is that India have realised how important it actually is to them. From that first game when he came in against Zimbabwe, he only hit 24 runs, but it was off 12 balls. He got them off to the flyers that they'd been failing to achieve with Ishan Kishan and Abhishek Sharma opening together, who you would say are probably just a little bit too similar to be opening the batting together. And actually that was the game, along with this game, where Sharma actually scored a 50. And I think in both of those innings, what you can tell is how important Samson is to Sharma, because as we said earlier, Samson is, really strong in those types of bowling that Sharma is weak against. And I think retrospectively, you can actually attribute a decent amount of credit to Sanju Samson for this crazy run of form that Sharma's had over the last year. So I think Samson has really cemented himself back in this team, and consecutive 50s in what was 3 knockout games for India. Essentially, that must-win game against West Indies, he iced a chase with 97 not out, and then he hit another fantastic 80 odd against England, and then again today. So he's rocketed his way up the average, up the total runs for the tournament, even though he only batted 5 times. So yeah, no question of a doubt that Samson deserves to be in there for me. And number 3, so yeah, I've got 2 number 3 batsmen here, so one of them's just going to have to bat number 4. I'm not going to dislodge Shimron Hetmyer from his position, because I was incredibly impressed with him throughout this tournament. 248 runs. Sorry, I've just dropped your focus, right? I'm dropping everything.
That's okay.
248 runs. Lovely. 248 runs at an average of 41, a strike rate of 186, which is very high. I think I'm just really impressed with how he stepped into the shoes of Nicholas Pooran, and Poo running rampant. I was really impressed, because up until this point we thought of more Hetmyer as like a hitter who bats number 5. You wouldn't really want him coming in too early. You might even think about demoting him if you lose too many early wickets, so that you can protect his wicket specifically for those last 5 overs. So to emerge from that, he's clearly the most talented batter in this West Indies side these days, and he's not always seemed fully committed to them. So it's nice to see him take on this mantle of their main man with such aplomb and really flourish in this tournament. And West Indies in general really impressed me in this tournament. And then the man who's getting knocked down from 3 to 4 after he's already been knocked down from opening to 3 is Ishan Kishan. But there's no doubt he deserves to be in the side before this final, because all these stats are only true up to the final, because I can't be bothered to update them because that'll take ages. 8 innings, 263 runs at an average of 32, which is perfectly serviceable, but it's that strike rate of 189 which stands out.
The man himself.
He's literally just come on screen, and then today he just played another blinder with 54 off 25. He's clearly someone who doesn't really mind where he bats. He'll just come in and cause carnage. And then there was 2 or 3 pretty outstanding boundary catches.
Well, I was going to say
today.
that having him in your side doesn't only get you runs, but it also, based on today's evidence, gets you incredible moments in the field. I mean, one of those catches where he was diving forward and he kind of juggled it and it bounced off his cap and he had to readjust to catch it again as he was diving forward. Some great field work in the final. So yeah, you've not only with that team, if we think about it as a cohesive unit, it's going to be pretty good in the field if you've got him on the form he was in today as well with his catching. Yeah,
obviously no one's going to turn down the opportunity to have any of these Indian batters in their lineup, but I think Samson and Kishan kind of emerged by the end of the tournament as the ones that had the real standout knocks. I think one person who just misses out, who I'll give a mention to, is Rachin Ravindra. He was right up in the mix for me right up until he got out really early on today, and I thought that probably settles it. I think it was Kishan that caught him, and it was those two that was between. So I was like, Kishan's going in. Not as many runs for Rachin, but he actually bowled really nicely. An economy of under 7. He's like a part-time spinner, and I looked back through all the matches, and it'd actually been even on the games early on where he was called only to bowl 1 or 2 overs, he would always get a wicket, and then by the Sri Lankan leg they were entrusting him with his full set, and he was delivering with two or 3 wickets every time. So he's definitely the backbone of any future New Zealand successes, but he misses out on my coveted list just about this time. And then if we move down to number 5, it was a weird, as I said, the middle order wasn't necessarily any standouts. Obviously, it's hard because you face less balls, so you score less runs. But I think overall, it was more like the number 1s, 2s, and 3s, and then the numbers 6s and 7s who seem to have the best tournaments. But one person who I think really deserves to have had a great tournament, and for his team to have had a great tournament, because he's been their sort of champion for a long time, and he's a seasoned, grizzled pro by now, is Sikandar Raza for Zimbabwe's captain. And just looking down the lineup, I think he'll probably be my captain in this lineup because there's not too many captaining options in this team. But fantastic tournament. He 206 runs at an average of 50, striking at 164, and then he also took 5 wickets along the way. And considering he was battling injury at points throughout this, I think that's very impressive. He's just a super impressive cricketer, and he has been for a long time. He's a Zimbabwean who you expect to see in every franchise competition, which is really quite rare. But you can tell how much he cares about Zimbabwe and how much he loves performing for them. And he, more than anyone, seemed to be really upset by the fact that they didn't make the last World Cup. So for him and his team to right that wrong so spectacularly this time around deserves crediting, I think. And with me saying that, spin bowling specialist spinners didn't necessarily shine in this tournament, I think it was important to get one or two sort of spin bowling all-rounder or batting spinners in this middle order, and we go straight from one to another with, unsurprisingly, Will Jacks gets in there, 8 innings, 226 runs at an average of 56, a strike rate of 176, 9 wickets and an economy of just under 10. I mean, the stats alone are good, but when you actually think about what those innings were, he was really pulling England out of trouble in those early games against the associate nations. But pretty much every game, even the ones that he didn't finish for England, like the Pakistan game where he did fall short, or even the India game, he's still emerging from that innings with a healthy strike rate. He was never getting bogged down and stuck and chewing up deliveries down in that lower order. And when you consider that that's not his natural position, that's pretty remarkable that he's managed to adapt. And then I don't think any of us saw how crucial of a bowler he was going to become in that Sri Lankan leg. Like, maybe we're all a little bit down on Will Jacks bowling after the Ashes, but in T20 cricket, there's no doubt that he's got a real role to play. I think he was probably the main factor in winning England that game against Sri Lanka, and then it just continued on throughout the tournament, really. I know you've been impressed with Jacks as well. I
have, yeah, and I think it's somewhat unexpected that he would kick on in terms of the form book when you look at, the Ashes as well. I think he was, and also I noticed with the India game, Bethel will take the headlines, but there was a partnership between those two, which was the one that kind of got us motoring after, Butler fell and Salt fell, and there was a bit of an early stumble, and it looked like we were just pushing, biting off more than we can chew and pushing too hard and losing wickets. But those two really steadied the ship. So even if maybe in that game, Bethel took the headlines, I think Will Jacks as well was a solid foundation for us to build on. So it's not like it didn't translate to the knockouts as well. And yeah, I've been very much impressed by him and sort of unexpectedly impressed by him, certainly from a bowling point of view as well.
Yeah, he was even the best bowler for England in that India game. If I can just remind myself of the stats quickly, he took 2 wickets. He went for 40 runs, but that was, par for the course for that game. His economy of 10 was actually the best by an England bowler.
Right.
And his 2 wickets was also the best.
What did he score in the end? Did he make it to 50?
No, 34 odd off 35 of 20.
Yeah.
But I think it's a testament to how crucial he became for England throughout the course of that tournament, that the game was done when he was out. Basically, that was how it felt. Yeah. That was how massive that catch from Axar Patel was, as we see India
lifting the trophy.
Now. It feels like it's been ages since it ended.
Get on with it.
But yeah, congratulations, India, once more. Moving on to another, all-rounder, as I've packed this sort of lower middle order with. And he's the only South African in the team, actually. And it's probably worth quickly mentioning the fact that we focus more on New Zealand's impressive performance in that T20 World Cup, but really in the semi-final, but really disappointing for South Africa to just roll over in the way they did after such a dominant couple of group stages. Yeah, just really surprised by that.
Yeah, well, I think we both. I mean, you had them as your winners, after the group phases, and I wasn't.
I can hear your smile when you say that.
No, I'm really trying to soften this blow for you. I when you said that, I was like, good on you, Charlie. I can see that. Well, I was absolutely of the opinion that was the final. that South Africa versus India was the final, and I did not see New Zealand. I thought it was a plucky effort for them to get to the semi-finals, New Zealand, and South Africa would have too much for them. And even when they made their total and it wasn't what we were expecting, I thought, but they'll find a way. And they didn't. So it was a shock. I don't know if I would have picked them to have won it over India, but I'm saying that with hindsight now to gloat over you.
Yeah, well, but I think the fact that they beat India, 2 or 3 games before just makes it all the more disappointing that they fell in a heap in the way they did, and especially seeing as, they were quite fortunate in playing the entire tournament in India. They were only one of the only teams to make the Super 8s that had that in their favour, and they just weren't able to make that an advantage for them, and it was just very frustrating from a neutral point of view, because South Africa are really, arguably been the dominant force in cricket over the last 2 years. They're World Test Championship winners, and we maybe thought that finally getting over the line in that tournament might, precipitate a little bit of a change in the way that people think about them in white ball tournaments and finally get over. Thank you. But no, it just seemed, I don't want to see like same old Sri Lanka, but of all the days to have an off day, the semi-final is not one of them. That being said, I have gone for one South African player, and that's Marco Jansen. Probably not a standout batter or bowler, but I think it was the fact that he was able to combine both was what impressed me. He apparently only made 73 runs, but that might be wrong. He didn't bat much, I know that, and I know they had to rest him a couple of times during the tournament, but when he did bat, he struck at 170, he got a crucial 50 at one stage. Obviously, with how good nicks South Africa's batters seem to be in, he didn't get that many opportunities to bat, but I think when he did was when they were in trouble, so I think it was admirable that he was able to hit them out of that trouble. And then 11 wickets as well. He's a real strike bowler. An economy of 10.45 across the tournament isn't great, but he gets wickets in clusters, and he's just, someone who can really turn a game on its head. I feel like this is probably the position that you could most question. There might be like a pure lower order batsman that deserves to be in there a little bit more, and you push Will Jacks down to 7. If I was to have a quick look at who was sort of highlighted by BBC, I'd say that Shanaka had a pretty good had a pretty good tournament down the innings. David Miller was decent. Shubham Ranhane, the USA, had a good 4 innings as well. But I just think, as I say, I was keen to balance this side and make it a proper cricketing side, and I think he was crucial to that, as was the next guy, who's going to be my number 8 batter, in Jason Holder. 5 innings, 141 runs at an average of 35 and a strike rate of 174, and then 10 wickets and an economy of just under 9. I was really impressed with Jason Holder. This one's probably helped by the fact that one of his best games was against England, certainly with the bat. But also he really pulled West Indies out of trouble with a fantastic 49 in that game against South Africa, which they ended up still losing comfortably, but it could have been much worse without his contribution. He's the one who's like 6'7", 6'8", if you remember him. He'd
just stick his arms out and it was going for 6.
Absolutely. And I think, again, he's had a good tournament, but this is with balancing the squad in mind, and I'm very happy with the team that I've ended up with. This next one was weird because, with the exception of Will Jacks, I wasn't too keen to put any England players in there, and I very quickly discounted Brooke and Bethel, for example. Oh, we just saw Headingley on the screen.
Well, we'll be there. We'll be there.
And that's Lords.
Yeah. You've been there.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of Lords. God, they do love Lords. Yeah, I don't feel like there was that many like amazing individual performances for England. And Adil Rashid, I thought he was good. He's always good. But I thought, he himself was capable of more. But it was only really upon, looking at who the options were for.
So he was only 1 wicket away from being the top wicket taker.
Yeah, he did. He got 13 wickets. Yeah. I think in the end that's kind of won out for me to pick him over the likes of Theekshana for Sri Lanka.
So have you picked, yeah.
Gudakesh Moti was in the running as well, and Liam Dawson actually had a very solid tournament. And I was kind of looking at Dawson versus Rashid, but it kind of turned out that in the big matches, Rashid seemed to do better, and then against some of the smaller nations, Dawson seemed to sort of get a lot of his wickets there. So I went for Rashid. I mean, he's so crucial to what England do. I really don't know what England are going to do if he needs to retire soon.
Which might be soon. I mean, he's getting on a bit, isn't he?
He's 37, 38. He's got no desire to retire, but it might happen. He might be forced into it either by England, which would be ridiculous, or just, by physical fitness and injury. But for the time being, he's so crucial to England. Obviously, as we sort of thought might happen, he did struggle a little bit in some of the India games where you were required to bowl a little bit quicker. He was actually the slowest bowler in the entire tournament. But particularly in Sri Lanka, he really thrived. And I think that even in those games when he got a bit of tap, apart from the Nepal game, all the other games where he went for runs, he also got wickets. And it's hard to envision many cricket matches where England don't use him for his full allocation. You'd be hard pressed to find someone who is as crucial to his side's performance as he is. Even Jasprit Bumrah is around a great team now, and he's important, but he's there's other people that can help him out. Moving on to Bumrah, he's obviously in here. He was in here before his 4 wickets today, even though his figures didn't necessarily.
I was actually intrigued, but I wonder if maybe you might have held him off and then put him in after today, but he was in beforehand. He's just so important, isn't he?
He was one of my locks, to be honest,
Yeah.
even though before today he had 10 wickets in 7 matches, which is good, but not, like groundbreaking. But it was the common economy of 6.62 that convinced me, which will have decreased a little bit from today because he went for 15 runs in 4 overs. It's just ridiculous to have that level of control when it feels like in the last few years, even the best bowlers have lost that control. You see Adil Rashid getting hit for 40 much more often. You see Sunil Narine, who for years in the IPL, just no one could hit him. Even now when he takes wicket, he goes for 40. It's so rare that we see that happen to Bumrah. And it's just because he's got everything, like every trick in the book. He's got raw pace. He's got a sublime control of line and length. He's got every change of pace you could imagine. He's got cutters, he's got slower balls.
I have to interrupt here because there's an advert with former Wimbledon champion Pat Cash getting a hair transplant.
This is why something I've really enjoyed about watching cricket over the last few years on Sky is that the adverts just make it really apparent how I'm not the target demographic that they're going for, because it's all hair loss.
I am.
Yeah, you are. It's all hair loss. It's all erectile dysfunction.
I am.
Thank you. It's all like
STDs. Is that next?
It's all like burglar alarms, life insurance, like Voltarol, pain relief.
God, I need to watch more cricket adverts, don't I?
Or just there was loads about how they'd minted a special coin to commemorate the Spitfire, and they were only going to make 10,000. So snap them up.
Snap
quick.
up 10,000.
So where were we?
Before you die.
He's just even if he's not sort of taking the headlines, much in the way of sort of Max Verstappen, as we were saying in our F1 review earlier, it's like even when he's just kind of like chugging along, it's still pretty spectacular, and maybe we lose sight a little bit of how special the things he's doing is just because he does them on such a regular basis, and he's capable of even more.
Very true. So that's your...
There's one more. There's one more. Sorry. So
is Bumrah in at 10? And
he is at 10, yeah. He was at 11, but I thought I'd link into Bumrah from Rashid. Right. But we've got one more man, and it's a man who you know that I like, and I'm going to say his name again. It's Shadley Van Shalwick.
Shalwick, yeah.
He's the only player to be eliminated in the group stage that is in this 11, and he's also the only associate player to make this 11. But you can't argue with 13 wickets in 4 games, an average of 7.
That's ridiculous.
And an economy of 6.8. Blessing Muzarabani is unfortunate to miss out for Zimbabwe.
But he wins best name.
He absolutely does. What, Muzarabani or Van Schalkwijk?
I think Van Schalkwijk and Blessing Muzarabani are two of the greatest
incredible.
names.
But yeah, he's unlucky to miss out. I think his figures were sort of equally ridiculous after the group stage, but he was almost unfortunate to make it out of the group stage, and then he got a bit of tap from some better teams in that just impossible group of death that Zimbabwe were placed into. But yeah, shout out to him. He was brilliant. Lungi Ngidi was also absolutely fantastic, as was Corbin Bosch, his teammate. So there were, quite a few impressive seamers in this tournament. But I went with Van Schalkwijk just because, I think he was kind of robbed of a chance to prove himself further to end up still joint third in the wicket takers list after playing 4 games.
Yeah, suggests he could have kicked on.
Played 8 or 9 games in this tournament is ridiculous, and he's very deserving of the final place in this 11. So just to run you through my thinking here, because I did want this, as I said, to be a very functional bowling lineup, and it's actually got so many options. You've got in Bumrah and Van Schalkwijk, you've got 2 like specialist seamers, but then Holder and Janssen are people that you would be happy to bowl a full allocation. I think if it was a seaming track in Ahmedabad, that's 16, bankable overs of seam right there, and then you've got Adil Rashid as your sole spinner, but then Sikandar Raza and Will Jacks to supplement him. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 genuine bowling options and a rock solid top 4 with lots of dynamic power. So I'm happy with the team, and congratulations to everyone for making it.
Yeah, well, that's what we've all been waiting for, isn't it? The Charlie team of the tournament. It doesn't really matter how you do as a side. It's more whether you individually can get in to Charlie's team of the tournament. So well done to everyone who did. And from Charlie's team of the tournament to Johnny's moment of the tournament. And I don't know if we were speaking before as to whether you had one, Charlie. I mean, I'll talk about mine, and maybe you can, if you do have one, can bring yours in. But mine is very much about me and how I felt in that moment, which was when the sun came out over Headingley and I popped to the original oak and plonked myself down with a Coca-Cola because I was being sensible, and watched on the big screen in the outdoor area Harry Brooks' 100. And I think the moment that he made that 100 would be my moment, just for where I was in that moment. That's what I will take away from this. Do you have a moment?
I don't have a moment. I just can't really be bothered to think of one. But
do you have an innings at the tournament?
I do, and it's Harry Brooks versus Pakistan. So we'll just go straight into that. I think there's so many innings to choose from. It's been just a remarkable tournament from a batting perspective. Really, it's been a while where these sort of T20 tournaments don't really reflect the wider T20 landscape, as scores tend to come down and it becomes a lot more attritional, a lot more bowling focused. And that's definitely still happened to an extent in this tournament, but there's been plenty of scope for some pretty spectacular batting. And up there you would have obviously Finn Allen, who we've spoken about in that semi-final, and Jacob Bettles-Knox in the semi-final. And, every other 100 that's been made is obviously a great innings. But for me, it would be Harry Brook, just because I think that was the innings most crucial to his team's victory. I think even though it was a chase of only 160, I don't think England would have got anywhere near it without Harry Brook. They needed every run. Yeah. They still managed to almost stuff it up.
It was very close, yeah.
And obviously Finn Allen has knocked 17 balls off Harry Brook's effort as the fastest 100 of this tournament. So it makes Brook seem pedestrian, but we really shouldn't lose sight of the fact that, a 50-ball World Cup 100 is not very common. It hasn't been at all. So, to score at that rate on a pitch that...
Is it one of two? Is he one of two? Was he the first?
I think he's one of two, potentially. Yeah, one of two. I think to have to score at that rate when you're only chasing 160 is sort of indicative of how difficult that pitch was, and no one else really got close to finding the same sort of timing that he did. And as much as we're annoyed at Harry for his decision to bowl first and then his drop of Sanju Samson, I think he just showed why he's a genius, as we said in the last episode.
Yeah.
So that would stand firm as my innings of the tournament personally, and your moment of the tournament.
I'm going to go innings of the tournament, Jacob Bethel, primarily because it was against India in the semi-final, and he got us so close to chasing down what would have been unbelievable if we'd have got chased that down, only 7 away. As you say, it was never really on, but there was a point and a very brief moment where it looked like it might be, and that was when Bethel and Jax were chugging along nicely. So I am going to go with Jacob Bethel just because he pulled out of the bag against the side that ultimately went on to walk this tournament.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think it was a much better pitch, which is why I'd go for it, even though it was against easier opposition, and the fact that Brook and Bethel scored at pretty much the same rate, and one of them was playing in a game where 250 was the target, and one was playing in a game where 160 was the target. But I think it's a completely fair pick. I think, as you say, he was coming up against the best bowling attack in the tournament and the world. He was in a situation where he could have easily crumbled. He'd already been demoted and lost his number 3 spot. So, it's worth pointing out that when he came in at 4, England were already in a whole heap of trouble. And he just showed the maturity and class he has beyond his years that, hopefully are going to prop up England for years to come.
So, Charlie, I think we might... I imagine that your match of the tournament hasn't changed since we discussed it right back at the start in one of our earlier podcasts. Has it changed?
No, you're right. It hasn't changed. Obviously, that England-India game was fantastic, and there's been lots of very good games, but I would still go for South Africa, Afghanistan, just from the mere fact of having 2 super overs. But even, the narratives within that super over, the fact that, that crazy final over that South Africa bowled that allowed Afghanistan back into it, and then Tristan Stubbs pulling them out of trouble in that first super over, and then putting what seemed like an unassailable total on the second super over, but then it was still live on the final ball. A 4 would have taken us to a third super over, and it was, it could have very well been a 4, but it was caught. So yeah, definitely match of the tournament for me. It was brilliant, but England-Pakistan up there, England-India up there for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that we've been part of a few of the better matches.
Well, that's one thing you can always rely on for England. Like, we are involved in great matches of cricket, whether we end up on the winning or losing side. And fair enough, a lot of those cricket matches are great matches of cricket because we should have walked it, and we managed to at least come close to stuffing it up. But, it makes following English cricket very exciting.
It does indeed. So, Charlie, I suppose to wrap up the tournament reflection area of this podcast, how would you look back on this tournament as a whole? Has it been a good tournament? Have you enjoyed watching it? Yeah,
it's nice to be able to answer in the affirmative on this one, because we were both pretty down on not just the result of the Ashes, but, the whole way it played out. This has been a great tournament, I think, from the very start, with the associates really, showing their attributes and showing why they should always be be a part of these tournaments to come, and hopefully even in ODI cricket we'll see more associates given more of an opportunity. But also, it's 8 incredible venues it's been played across. Obviously, we know, I've seen loads of T20 cricket played in these 5 venues across India because of the IPL. So maybe that's lost a little bit of its magic, but you shouldn't really lose sight of how fantastic these are as stadiums. The Modi Stadium that we saw the match play out at today is 130,000 capacity, and it was full today. Which brings me on to the crowds as well. Been really well attended, even the neutral games, which is always a bit of a concern in a Cricket World Cup. So that was really nice to see. I loved the cricket in Sri Lanka. I thought it was, attritional. It was intriguing. I thought the crowds were great, really up for it. And obviously the landscape's just absolutely stunning. I think it was good that we saw some higher scores. Like, you can really get low scoring thrillers in World Cups, and hopefully there'll still be a fixture in years to come. But, we saw a real variance in totals in this World Cup, which made it really exciting. I think the best team won, which, doesn't make for a great narrative, but makes for a fair tournament, I think. I think, as we've already said, the only gripe that I have is that, I just want to see quarterfinals next time. Please give us quarterfinals.
Absolutely. Well, I, as a kind of newbie to T20s, really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed how attacking the cricket was. I really enjoyed the run rates. I really enjoyed the narratives, and I thought, it was fantastic to see, just from an England point of view, us get to the semi-finals and give it a really good go against the best team in the world. And yeah, thoroughly enjoyed the tournament. And if I'm enjoying it as a newbie to it, I think that's a good sign for it generally as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you say that you're happy with England's performance, because I think
after the Ashes.
Yeah, that's very true. But that's the next thing that we want to discuss was this tournament a success from an England perspective? You said yes.
Yeah.
I think I would say yes as well. It's interesting because the last T20 World Cup in 2024, England made the semis as well, but that was seen as a categorical failure, and that was actually the final nail in the coffin for Matthew Mott, who had a pretty disastrous couple of years as England's... Oh, pardon me, the Guinness is working through me. He had a pretty disastrous couple of years as... did you just highlight something with your foot?
Yeah, I didn't mean to.
That was very impressive.
I wish I claimed that. That yes, that's what I meant to do.
Yeah, like that semi-final was seen as disaster, but that was more when you broke it down, that England in that first group stage, they annihilated the associate nations. Anytime they came up against anyone who was an established cricket team in Australia and even Scotland, they were really in trouble. And then the only game that they really won that you were surprised that they won was against the West Indies in the Super 8s, which was just enough to squeeze them through, because they had an associate in their group. I can't remember. I'm just going to look it up, actually. Super 8s groups. Stall, Johnny, stall.
Well, I was just going to say that it feels like we kind of gathered momentum as we went along in this tournament.
Absolutely.
Whereas based on what you're saying on the previous tournament, that we showed almost false momentum that was found out at the latter stages. Whereas I think here we gained momentum and actually came up against India. And other than South Africa, who, of course, beat India, we ran them the closest.
Yeah, absolutely. It was... we had USA. It was USA, England, West Indies, and South Africa. We got trounced by South Africa. USA had a great tournament, but it was kind of fortunate for us with the draw again to have USA in our group, and we managed to win. And then the West Indies, we just needed one game to get over the line into the semi-finals, where we met India, and we were just absolutely destroyed by them. Whereas this time around, obviously, it didn't start great, but I think they showed a tremendous amount of grit and bottle to get out of that group and to just improve as it went on. And then the Sri Lankan leg of the tournament was really enjoyable from an England perspective. We saw them win in different ways, really relying on that spin trio and on some pretty remarkable innings and some good sort of innings management from England, which you don't always credit them for. And then ultimately we've had the same result in the semis of losing to India, but it was a much more respectable effort this time. And I think my early prediction, well, it's kind of already been confirmed, is that we probably won't see any major structural changes from England. I think Baz and Brooke and probably Rob Key have done just about enough to keep their jobs for now, which I think is fair enough. I think if you wanted to sack McCullum after the Ashes, fair enough. I personally wouldn't have, but some people might have wanted to see him go. But I think if reaching a semi-final of a major tournament was kind of the nail in the coffin, I think it would undermine your argument, really. Yeah,
I think it would be quite hard, and also the manner of it. I mean, to come up against India, are you really expecting to go further when you face them in the semi-finals?
Yeah, exactly. I guess a bit of realism has to come into it. I think as well, like McCullum showed a willingness to adapt on a certain extent. Like he's not going to, rip it all up and start again. And he stands by his overall ethos. But I think, the fact that they've rehired a fielding coach, they're looking into getting getting a permanent bowling coach. And, McCullum, it might have been a little bit token, but him and his walkie-talkie early on in the tournament, he's clearly showing that, and he speaks with every opportunity he gets that, he loves the job and he wants to keep it. And I think, he's showing enough of a willingness to adapt. And the next question will be, can he take this young side that he's created and, turn them into men?
And I suppose with that, we should look forward for England. What's next for them? We've spoken about McCullum's future. Looks safe for now. Looks like there's not going to be many changes at the top. So what are we... Obviously, this podcast is going to take a hiatus in terms of the cricket side of it. Plenty of F1 content to come, so don't go away. But in terms of a cricketing situation, what's on the horizon for England?
So we know that the... test this summer against New Zealand and Pakistan, and
we'll be at one of them. Yes,
to Pakistan. How excited!
We'll get Corridor on tour.
Yeah, and that is
down the road on tour to 300 yards away.
Absolutely, and that first test starts in 87 days, 15 hours and 6 minutes. So I guess that's exactly how long we will be departing from you. So almost 3 months of no games for England, as far as I can tell. And then, if you were thinking that we'd get a little bit of an easier ride in the white ball cricket for the summer, we're playing India. Nice. So that's going to be tricky. And then we've obviously got Pakistan, which will be great. And then Sri Lanka for some white ball stuff. So that's what's coming up for England. Early predictions, I think won't see too much wholesale change from the Ashes because, so many of this team are young. I think they'll hopefully be given an opportunity to learn from that chastening series and to improve. We're obviously going to see Jacob Bethel at number 3 and seeing him batting for an entire English summer will be really exciting. I'd be interested to see if he maybe considers skipping the IPL this year and playing some county cricket, but I definitely don't think that there'll be any pressure from the England management for him to do that. I think they'll leave it up to him, and they definitely don't mind their players featuring in the IPL, but yeah, it'd be exciting. I think it's not necessarily a marquee English summer in terms of tests, but I think with where England are as a team, it's probably, a good challenge for them and a good opportunity to, really try and build as a team, because then if you look forward even further to the following winter, it's an away series in South Africa, which is going to be a real challenge.
Tough. So, Charlie, T20 World Cup 2026, what are your final thoughts?
Good. England,
good.
okay.
Yeah.
India, fantastic.
Deserved winners.
South Africa, disappointing.
New Zealand, bucking the trend.
New Zealand, well, not really.
Well,
New Zealand
bucking your trend, following their trend,
yeah. Really fun, vibrant, exciting. Kind of, I would say that I can't wait for the next one, but it's probably going to be in about 5 minutes' time, so I can wait for the next one.
Yeah.
But yeah, congratulations to everyone else. I think if I had one final statement, it would be, oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you very much for listening, everybody. As I said, plenty more F1 content, Chinese Grand Prix in a couple of weeks' time. And thank you for joining us on the Corridor of Uncertainty. Bye now.
Thank you.